G'day there guys, it's your Aussie Hubby Markee, back at it again with another r/legal advice video. Now if you love me like I love you, then you know what to do. Want you to mosey on over to that old like button and tackle it like Steve Irwin would tackle a crocodile. Maybe even chuck an Aussie flag down in the comments. Now with that said, I want you to sit back, relax, chug a prawn on the barbie, and get ready for some bloody good legal advice. Now our first post today is by user Psycho8. Titled, "An employee has obtained a personal video of me and is showing it to others." So, a year ago I had a brief casual relationship with a coworker. Since then I've been promoted and now manage a team of up to 40 people, including a woman who is currently dating my ex-partner. This ex, against my wishes, had apparently kept videos of me on his phone, editing to clarify, explicit pornographic videos. I was aware of their existence but had been requested that they be deleted. Last week this woman found one of the videos, sent it to herself, and is now showing it to people that I work with and manage. She is also lying about to when this all occurred, saying that it was recent. Obviously I made a big mistake in my choice of partner. Shaming isn't necessary or welcome. I promise you I'm shaming myself plenty. I had a strict no photos policy prior to this and allowed the videos to be taken because I was pressured. That's neither here nor there at this point. I'm in New York City. Is there anything I can do from a legal perspective? Does this count as slander and revenge porn? My job doesn't have any policies against employee relations, so I'm protected on that side of it. I just want this to end now. Report this to HR immediately. If they do not respond immediately, then it is a clear violation of sexual harassment regulations in your state. What she is doing is grounds for immediate termination. It is not only harmful to you, but also harmful to your entire organization. There is nothing about engaging in intimate acts with a former loved one that is to be ashamed of. It is a natural event in a universal human experience. Any adult with half a brain understands this, and I imagine your HR department does as well. Embarrassing as this is for you, HR is likely trained to deal with these issues. She is the problem, not you. On the other hand, maliciously distributing a video of said acts without your consent is something to be ashamed of. I encourage you to take full advantage of all available avenues for recourse. Further, you can report this as harassment to your local police department, and if said harassment continues, it can be grounds for a protective order. This issue need not specifically fall under revenge porn laws. There are other avenues of recourse available as well. As a side point, your ex is a turd, and this woman is out of her mind. You would have to be explicitly open yourself up to potential termination by doing something so asinine. Edit, with regard to your post about the broken phone, if the video was ever transmitted via cellular or Wi-Fi, the evidence will be available for at least 90 days. It can still be traceable beyond 90 days, but generally the sooner the service provider gets a subpoena, the better the chance you will have to recover this evidence. Thank you for this helpful and reassuring advice. I'm writing an email to HR now to set up a meeting for Monday morning. I'm embarrassed mostly because the people involved are not the most savory of characters. I was in a bad place mentally when that relationship happened, and allowed myself to be pressured into things that I wasn't comfortable with and wouldn't put up with when in my right mind. I got myself some good therapy, and he was the first thing to go as I recovered. I was hoping to just put it all behind me, but poor choices have consequences, I guess. Before I knew she had the video, I was empathizing with her. It's really a crap thing to find out your partner is keeping videos of exes and isn't honest about who he's been with. But having the video and showing it to people who work for me is way beyond what I can stand for. It's bringing me back to that dark place that I worked so hard to come out of, and that's the worst part of it for me. Sorry for the venting. This is weighing heavy. OP, just to reiterate, you did nothing wrong. Your ex and new woman have done and are doing everything wrong. Don't feel ashamed at all. This is solely on them. Also, just an additional question. Are there any people that she's shown the video or videos to that would be willing to serve as a witness for you? It's not necessary, but it's helpful in building a case for HR. They didn't respond to that question, damn it OP. And there's an edit in the post. I appreciate these supportive comments, makes me feel much better. As I'm making inquiries now, it seems she's figured out that distributing the video was a very bad choice. She's got her friends circling the wagons and telling me that the video was never shown to anyone and she never had it. I know for a fact that this is a lie, but it complicates things. Apparently she even broke her phone and got a new one. I've talked to my boss, who is also a good friend. We all work on Saturdays, which is why I'm dealing with it today. And we're trying to figure out options to move forward. Edit 2, I called my director, who has been my mentor since I started here 3 years ago. I knew he'd been told about the situation and was dreading the call, but he was kind and supportive in every way. He actually took this decision completely out of my hands and will be contacting HR and our VP on my behalf. He's also reassured me that he doesn't judge, no one else will judge, and that they'll take care of me. He also gave advice as far as pressing charges. I guess even her sending it to her phone from his is illegal, even if she never showed it to anyone. I feel so much better. Thank you all for the kindness and support, which are ultimately what made me feel okay about speaking to my director. And now, update. An employee has obtained a personal video of me and is showing it to others. Since my last post gained some attention, I'm posting an update. After I submitted the post on Saturday, I called my director. He has been my mentor and a trusted friend since I started in the company 3 years ago, and was already aware that the relationship between myself and my ex was a thing that happened. I'd been told that my employee had gone directly to him. I'm assuming to smear me, so I knew I had to speak to him about it directly. I was expecting an "I told you so" type conversation, but he was kind, understanding, and completely non-judgmental. He told me he doesn't look at me any differently, and no one else does either. Who matters? He also made my decision about whether or not to go to HR much easier. Since he's a director and she brought it to him, he was obligated to report it. This was basically the best case scenario for me. I'd had several of her friends come to me and ask me not to go to HR and to let her work it out of her system. Now I can say that the decision to bring it to them was completely out of my hands. I got a phone call from HR this morning asking me to report immediately to them. I asked them if I could go to my building first to clock in and change, and they told me nope, ASAP. I sat down with them and they were also totally kind and completely non-judgmental and supportive. They got the full story, the names of everyone involved, and asked a lot of questions. They also confirmed what commenters on my last post told me, that I'd done nothing wrong and did nothing to be ashamed of. They even told me that they will do whatever they can to protect my reputation as the investigation moves forward. From what I've heard, both the AVP and the Director of HR have dedicated their entire day today to interviews with people, so I feel confident that this is being handled as it should. They called her in this afternoon to get her story and suspended her with pay pending the investigation. As an aside, as my manager drove her to the corporate office for the meeting, she told him how she's the real victim here. The mental gymnastics just totally baffles me. I have been advised to document everything, including any interactions with her friends, in case there is any hostile workplace environmental concerns. Jesus, that is an entire bag of worms, is it not? Alright, now our next post is by user Valeth West, titled, "I think my mum is going to try to kill my grandmother and make it look like suicide. Best of legal advice posted." Now for some background, I live in WA, and my mother and grandmother live in New Jersey. My grandmother is 82, diabetic, mostly blind, has anxiety, and needs help with some daily tasks, like shopping, hygiene, etc. But otherwise is doing fairly well considering. She had surgery about a week and a half ago to have a toe amputated, which is when this whole fiasco started. My mother is mentally ill and refuses to seek treatment for it, and has a long history of abusing other people and/or overlooking abuse of others for her own gain. That is to say that her killing her own mother definitely would be something in the realm of possibilities for her. She also has about 15 years of experience in the medical field, EMS, so she knows a thing or two. Since my grandmother's surgery, my mother has been really playing up the fact that my grandmother is depressed. She's always been the alarmist type, so I just brushed it off. But the way she spoke about her was as though she was insisting she thought my grandmother was going to pass soon. At some point during this time, my aunt tried to call my grandmother to see how her recovery was going. But my mum answered, Grandmother was napping, went off on my aunt, and to my understanding lied and said that my grandmother couldn't talk because something had happened during surgery and now she needed a speech therapist. I spoke to my grandmother on Sunday and there was no difference in her speech, so clearly the speech therapist was BS. My grandmother also expressed that she feels great, that her leg gets sore occasionally, but they put a salve on it and the soreness goes away. And otherwise, she's healing and recovering well, isn't on any pain medications or antibiotics, and her foot looks good. I know that she's my grandmother and doesn't like for me to worry, but all of this does align with my mother's updates, except that my mother keeps insisting upon the depression. Today, my mum messaged me again, insisting that my grandmother is depressed. She's having a hard time recovering, etc., and telling me that she spoke with a social worker who is helping her take the necessary steps to become her paid caretaker. She's also stated that she's seeking POA for my grandmother's medical care and affairs, quotation marks, that they're putting together a living will, and making funeral arrangements for my grandmother's cremation. She says that my grandmother insists we use the cheapest funeral home we can find. I believe this is true, and that she wants us to use her life insurance to pay the cremation costs and split the remainder between my mother, myself, and one of my brothers. I suspect this is a lie. The problem is, my brother and I are the only beneficiaries on my grandmother's life insurance, which is where the power of attorney comes in. I knew my mum was going to try to weasel her way into the life insurance somehow, and now I know how she's going to do it. Several hours after this conversation, it dawned on me. I believe she's planning to save up money for a while and kill my grandmother, making it look like a suicide and have everything left to her. I plan on talking to my uncle and explaining my suspicions to him, as well as trying to get in touch with the social worker, but I was wondering what other steps I can try to take to prevent this from happening. Can I request that a social worker check in on my grandmother and speak to her privately on a regular basis? Can I demand an autopsy upon her death under suspicion of foul play, even if it goes against my grandmother's final wishes? Is there a way that I can get the police involved to stop the cremation from happening before I'm able to get an autopsy performed? What steps could my uncle take to prevent my mother from gaining power of attorney and putting herself on my grandmother's life insurance? Any and all advice is welcome, as I truly don't know what to do in this situation. Just a note, a caregiver other than my mum is out of the question. There's no way my mother would allow it, and my grandmother would vouch for my mother, because my mother is the only person she's comfortable with taking care of her due to her anxiety. Call Adult Protective Services. I don't think they can do anything because my mother hasn't done anything to raise suspicion at this point. Would calling at least put her on the radar for the future? Edit to add, I want to emphasize that at this point, my mother is taking very good care of my grandmother. I don't think she's planning on enacting anything until after I visit in April, so I'm afraid of calling prematurely and having a false flags for her to leverage in her favor for the future. They'll probably investigate it. Your mum may also need Adult Protective Services. It won't hurt in any case. Would she be able to use that as leverage in the future though? Like, oh, we've had people calling us before, so it's clearly BS. She's seriously the most cunning person that I know. She once went to voluntary inpatient when she was stuck in Florida, and somehow managed to get them to pay for a bus ticket for her to New Jersey because no one in my family would pay for her. It's possible if there were multiple calls without grounding that it could be ignored in the future, but that should not stall you from calling under these circumstances. The bus ticket is very standard for people released from psychiatric care. It's called busing, and they often use it to get patients out of a state and off their Medicaid. I'll give them a call, but she already has a social worker whom I'm also going to contact, so I don't know if APS would actually investigate. Like you said, it couldn't hurt though, and at least she'll be on their radar. Thank you. Swedish Punch says, besides calling APS, call the cops and report that your mother says grandma is suicidal. I'm pretty sure that they will have to make a welfare check. If mum realizes that she is on the radar of law enforcement and social agencies, this may deter her. If your uncle is as alarmed as you are, he should talk to an attorney and find out what the options are for grandma. It sounds like she would be better off away from your mother. That's where things are complicated. My mum hasn't actually said that she's suicidal, just that she's having a hard time, discussing talking to a therapist. which I think is a good idea regardless, and that she's getting ready, as in to pass away. These are things that might not sound weird to outsiders, and may even seem like she's being attentive. But knowing her the way I do, those statements are really alarming, because it seems to me like she's trying to play up my grandmother being depressed and ready to die, without actually saying that she's suicidal. Since I'm getting downvoted for asking about child protective services, I want to clarify that I'm not intending to be argumentative. I'm just trying to avoid my mum being able to use false reports to her advantage. After all, if she is doing what I think she is, my grandmother's life depends on being able to have the proper authorities on our side. That said, what could be the best point to call to have a welfare check done? Should I wait until my mum actually clearly hints that she's suicidal, and not just ready to die? I agree that her being on anyone's radar might deter her. I just don't know when to get people involved, since I think she's in it for the long con, so to speak. He'll definitely be alarmed, so I'll advise him to get a lawyer involved. Thank you. Not a lawyer, but practical advice. It may be that you would have to wait until your mother actually says that she is suicidal before you call the cops. An attorney could advise you on that. Perhaps you should call your grandma's doctor and the social worker at the hospital with your concerns. Even if they can't tell you anything, according to HIPAA, you can still tell them about the situation. Assuming the grandma will have periodic checkups post-surgery, the doctor may be able to make an assessment of her mental state. Since you are genuinely concerned, get as many people looking into the situation as possible, hoping that it will deter your mother from harming grandma, or trying to steal from the estate. That was more or less my plan with the social worker, but I hadn't considered talking to her doctor. Thank you. The more eyes and ears, the better. And last one, conservator. That would mean that in the event of your grandmother's death, your uncle or you would proceed with final wishes, but considered a primary party. This also usually comes with a boilerplate power of attorney, at least the ones I've seen have. You should also have a will made with some more specific language as to what happens with the life insurance. I will say, in many cases that I've seen, as a legal assistant mind you, conservators have some power, especially if and when you ask for police to open an investigation. Consequently, if your mum has a diagnosed mental illness, you can have her declared unfit and have an order created to get the insurance in the form of trust, with terms either spelled out by a will or the conservator. This would also stop your mother from ever being able to be assigned power of attorney over anyone. That said, this will likely trash your relationship with your mother. Thank you so much for this information. I'll discuss with my uncle him becoming conservator in addition to fighting for power of attorney. She has been formally diagnosed, so I will ask the social worker how that would work in terms of keeping her from getting power of attorney. Thank you again. Alright, and now on to our update from I think my mum is going to try to kill my grandmother and make it look like a suicide. I wanted to thank the r/LegalAdvice community and give an update to my original post from about 4 months ago. For privacy purposes, as this is an ongoing situation, this post will be fairly short and vague. Last month, my grandmother was admitted to the ICU in respiratory failure. She pulled through, but with the help of my aunts, uncles, and cousins, we determined with evidence that my mum has been both neglecting my grandmother's medical needs and drugging my grandmother without her knowledge. Although she wouldn't outright say it to me, it turns out that my mother had been insisting it to my cousins that my grandmother was suicidal, and even tried to keep pushing the "she wants to kill herself" narrative while my grandmother was hospitalized. We believe that she may have even attempted to OD my grandmother at the hospital, but that her plan was thwarted by ever-present relatives. As an aside, we did alert the hospital of the situation, and unfortunately, were told that they couldn't do anything because it's a family matter. Everything is now in the hands of my auntie, who's working with a lawyer to address this situation in the least stressful way for my grandmother. Thank you all for your advice and support on my last post, and I'm so glad that my grandmother is still with us. I truly believed that this situation would only end in tragedy, but it seems fate had different plans. My grandmother is still in care of my mother for the moment, with relatives checking in daily, and while my mother is not yet aware that my family knows of everything she's been doing, she does at least know that her siblings are seeking to change the power of attorney and insurance benefits out of her name, and has since completely changed her tune about my grandmother's mental health. Otherwise, my grandmother is home and doing well, and is under the close eye of her children, doctors, and social workers, while my family works out where to go from here. Thank you all again. Alright, I hope you guys all enjoyed that story. We're on to our last one today by user Comedy Legal Advice, titled, Abusive Ex-Boyfriend is Threatening to Sue Over a Joke I Told About Him at an Open Mic in California. So, a few years ago, I was in an extremely abusive relationship. I am not a professional comedian. I don't make money from this. Sometimes I get free drinks or something, and I have a day job that I'm not looking to quit. This is just a hobby. I go to open mic nights and tell jokes for fun. It's hard to explain this joke exactly without totally identifying myself, which I don't want to do, but it's a pretty dark story about this screwed up thing my ex did to me once. Although it's not a funny situation, the way I tell it is pretty funny and it gets a big laugh. I do not use his name or any identifying information about him at any point. We live in a very large city. It's not like everyone automatically knows who I'm talking about. I'm not famous or anything. Anyway, an acquaintance of mine recorded me telling this joke and put it on Snapchat, and she apparently also knows him. This acquaintance did not send it to him directly or anything, and didn't even know he was the person I was talking about, or that he and I knew each other. Total coincidence. He saw it on Snapchat and sent her a lot of messages demanding to know where this was and what else I said about him. She told him the bar we were at first, but he kept pressing for more details and made her uncomfortable, so she blocked him and let me know what happened, and apologized profusely for letting him know what bar. We go there a lot, but she didn't know better. I'm not mad. My ex DM'd me on Twitter, which is the only form of contacting me I didn't have him blocked on, and told me he was going to sue me for defamation because I am telling lies about him and committing character assassination. He also sent me a cease and desist letter attached in my DMs as a photo that restated his intent to sue and compensate for the damages done to his reputation. Can he do this? First of all, they are not lies. This is a true story about a horrible thing that actually happened. But more importantly, I don't use his name. Nobody knew it was about him until he freaked out and told someone. What do I do? Also, can I keep telling jokes about him? You're good. I would add this into your new set. Ha! I'll probably get there eventually, but it's just stressful right now. I can't even imagine finding any humor in it. I felt that way about most of my personal stories at the time though. I'll think it's funny once I get through this. You shouldn't feel stressed at all about this. He literally doesn't know about what he's talking about. Even if you used his name in your jokes, it's not libel or slander if it's true. And by not mentioning his name at all, he literally has nothing to stand on. Adding his legal threat to your repertoire of jokes is poetic. If he finds a new way to contact you, add those to your jokes too. Also, I feel like if he actually sues, he's proving that she's not lying. Because if someone makes a joke about, so hey, I used to have an ex that would beat the crap out of me, especially without mentioning names, and an ex steps forward and goes, hey, that's me! Oh, that's terrible. I shouldn't laugh about that, but it's comedy, come on, it's funny. Anyway, the boy's not quite right. In the highly unlikely event that he were to file suit, your attorney will ask him, why do you think that when the public hears the story of despicable screwed up action without your name being mentioned, your identity immediately leaps to the forefront of the public's mind? And that will likely be the end of things. In the unlikely event that he were to sue, check with your homeowner or renter's insurance. There's a thin possibility that they might provide a lawyer at their expense. That's good to hear and a good tip. Thank you. If he ever sends you anything he claims is from his lawyer, give their office a call and make sure it's real. It's pretty common for guys like this to forge some legal letterhead to scare people, and lawyers will absolutely hate that and will scare him right back if he does. Actually search the legal firm on Google, then call the number that Google gives you. And to summarize all this, truth is an absolute defense to defamation claims. Furthermore, if he is not identified or identifiable from what you say, his reputational damage doesn't exist. Can he send you a cease and desist? Yes. Can you ignore it? Yes. Can he sue you? Yes. Can he win? No. It would be extremely unlikely that he would win. And now with that said, we're on to our update. Edit, I appreciate all the kind and helpful PMs, and I will continue to appreciate and respond to those. but I will not be responding to all the messages asking to hear the joke or other questions about my life and comedy in general. Sorry, privacy. Thanks to everyone for the advice. Quite a bit has happened since my first post. I ignored him and continued doing what I was doing. Then, a few days after I posted, he showed up at the bar while I wasn't there and asked around for me. They said he seemed drunk, which is unfortunate as he allegedly got sober after our breakup. They told him to screw off and called me to warn me. Before I could even react to that, he contacted several people at my work via social media, including one person very high up in upper management who barely knows who I am. He sent them all the same opener, saying that he was trying to reach out to me and asked for my phone number or email and saying that it was urgent. Two of my colleagues responded to this message that I know of. Both said something to the effect that they wouldn't be able to share my info, but they'd let me know that he asked. He then began threatening them with warning them about me and telling them very sexually explicit things about me and asking if they were sure I was the type of person they wanted to work with. I was really trying to avoid asking anyone at work for help, even though I knew they would be nice about it. I didn't want to be the person that drags their drama into the office, but my ex did it for me. So I decided it couldn't hurt at this point to consult with a friendly coworker in legal to see what she thinks. She walked me through getting a restraining order and put me in touch with an attorney that practices in this area if I end up needing it. I really hope not to. So, literally 2 days after the TRO was granted and he had been served, he showed up at the bar again, drunk again, and this time I was there. It was honestly really surreal seeing him. They kicked him out, but he loitered outside and refused to leave, and the bartender and my friends and some random strangers were all guarding the door. It was quite the debacle. We called the cops and he was arrested. So I think I'm in the clear for now, although I know he's willing to break the law, so I'm not incredibly comfortable. I put up cameras in my apartment, my friends are walking me out the car every night, I used to walk alone, it's a safe enough area that it was never concerned before. My employer and colleagues are aware and supportive, even though I wish I could have kept this private. I'm doing what I can. There wasn't a huge dramatic ending to all of this, but it seems like it should be over now. Here's hoping. Thank you again for the advice and support, everyone. Alright, and that wraps up our episode today, guys. I hope you really enjoyed this one. If you haven't seen my latest community post, my friend has just started a YouTube channel doing the same kind of content as me, and I really want to encourage you guys to go and watch his videos and support him and help him grow his channel. His channel is called Storyhawk, and there's a link to it in the top right of the screen, and probably a box that I'll put on there as well. I hope you guys go and just, watch it, subscribe to him, help him just, start his life on YouTube. Say hi to him, I hope you guys enjoyed this one today anyway. As always, this has been Markee. Tell me what you thought about this one down in the comments. As always, I hope you have a good day, night, sleep, whatever you're up to, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.